All right, good morning once again, everybody. I want to say a quick thank you to the 3 people that have already subscribed to this channel. That means a lot. I know it's probably small in YouTube numbers, social media numbers, but it means a lot that anybody would even want to listen to this. So thank you. All right, so in order to prevent this channel from turning into a theoretical dialogue or monologue with myself that can get super boring and turn into a snooze fest real quick. I think it's important to jump into a real world current topic. Not that those theories are unimportant. In fact, I think they're very useful. However, I think theories and ideas and more abstract concepts are only useful in so much as we can put them into practice in our everyday life. So now that I've laid the groundwork, and I'm sure there's more that I've missed that I can hit in later videos, I think it's time to jump in to something that's really been, as I see it, been kind of tearing our country apart. One of the variables that's been tearing it apart, and that is the topic of abortion. So two quick things that I want to say about not necessarily the topic in general, but just as a philosophy of mine kind of moving forward in this is, one, oftentimes you hear people say that I don't talk about religion or politics with family members or friends because oftentimes leads to conflict, and that's just understandable. Those two topics encompass many of the reasons people would have conflict with one another, and that's uncomfortable. It's unfortunate, however, because oftentimes in those really difficult topics is where we find the most meaning and the most value and can connect with one another and really provide a meaningful understanding, a shared understanding, and mutual show of respect. So I want to take the opposite approach, which is not to avoid those, but to dive head on or head into those in order to hopefully find the truth that I've underlined as the intent of this podcast. The second of which, before I jump into the topic itself, is the idea that I'm not here to change anybody's mind. Oftentimes I hear people say that I think with this, I'm going to change your mind. The only person that's capable of truly changing your mind is yourself. You can be provided with all the information in the world, but if you refuse to accept or want to stay bull strong on your beliefs, then you're going to. And the last couple years through the pandemic, we've definitely seen camps and tribes be divided and be almost impervious to information from one way or another. So I'm not trying to change anybody's mind, simply to throw out some information as I see it. If it can be corrected based on things that you understand, by all means, maybe it will correct some of your misunderstandings. But you have the sovereignty over your own mind, which is one of the beautiful things about life itself. So, abortion. The way I see it, the crux of abortion and why it's so contentious is because we have two of the ancient pillars of American society at conflict with one another. One of which is the sanctity of human life, so the value of life. The second of which is the value of individual freedoms or liberty. So life, liberty, things that you hear oftentimes reflected in the writings of our founding fathers. So you have the protection of the life of the unborn child. Also can be the protection of the life of the mother if there's a life-threatening challenge or issue with the baby pre-birth. And then you also have the individual liberty and the sovereignty that a woman has over her body and her right to choose, something that we've worked collectively as a society over the millennia to get to a place. So the idea of threatening that, and in some people's minds taking a step backwards, is understandably challenging to their identity. Those are two big topics, so I'm only going to talk about the first one today, which is the sanctity of life, of human life, and then in the next video I'll talk about the individual liberty challenges that the abortion topic proposes. So the first is life. when I was thinking about the most ancient historical text that I could draw upon in order to talk about or to show that human life is collectively respected, and that it would be a crime or a sin to take another human life, the not even from a religious perspective, but from a historical perspective, the Bible's the oldest one that I know of. If anybody else knows of anything different, that would be awesome to hear of. But at least 2,000 years old, and one of the laws of Moses becoming the Ten Commandments is thou shalt not murder. Why? I think when you analyze the why not take a life question, you can view it on kind of the three philosophical, moral frameworks and lenses. The first of which being virtue ethics, which is typically, a thing is good or bad because it is good or bad. It's just inherent in its nature and it's self-evident. So we could say that standing on the corner and shooting passerbys or shooting up a school is an inherently bad thing. It's an immoral action just because of the way it is. We have a visceral reaction to it that for some reason or other we can't. We don't even need to logically think through it. Just we know that it's wrong. The second of which is a deontological argument, meaning that's against the rules. So when you look at the commandment, or you look at our modern laws, manslaughter, murder one, murder two, within the U.S. and then throughout the world. In fact, I don't think, if anybody knows of a civilized nation with a centralized government of any sort that doesn't have a law on the books against the taking of a human life, please let me know about it. But I think that's a universal common law. So it's against the rules to take a human life. And why is it against the rules? You refer back to potentially virtue ethics, or you can go on to the third framework to look at moral decision making through, which is a consequentialist argument. Meaning we judge the moral good or bad of something based on the outcome, the consequences. So if somebody decides to shoot up a school, well, the outcome, not only are the lives of those children gone and the future, any future accomplishments or people that they would offspring of those people are gone, you're devastating the families, you are potentially preventing people from trusting in the safety and security of a school, and therefore maybe you're denying people the ability and the freedom to go seek higher education. You're tearing the fabric of the country apart. Now you have gun control rights issues, mental health issues arise, and how we're dealing with that, which are totally different subjects that purely by analogy I want to focus on the value of human life. Those are topics for another day that I intend to get into. So those are ways we can look at human life being wrong. I don't think it is a stretch to say that the bulk of humanity thinks that it is wrong to unjustifiably take another human life. Now this is where kind of things get interesting, is in that term unjustifiably. We do have laws and recognize the ability of someone to protect their life, their loved ones, or their property from an aggressor attempting to take any of those things from them. We call it self-defense. So we are oftentimes not oftentimes, it is frequent enough to where we have an exception to the thou shalt not murder rule, generally speaking across the laws, across the moral religions, that some people deserve to be taken, deserve to have their life taken from them rather. That's where things get complicated, because it could be within the circumstances of a war. So the law of armed conflict, denotes that some people's lives, armed combatants can be killed on the field of battle. You can even have it in domestic situations where somebody's trying to break into your home and you feel that your life is threatened, or the life of your family and your possessions are threatened, then you are legally allowed to take their life. However, it's a tricky circumstance either way, because the taking of a human life doesn't just fall into the deontological realm, as I've talked about, to where, as long as I follow the rules to killing somebody, I'm good to go. There will likely be a moral stain, or what I would call a moral stain, that you'll have to work through if you have to take somebody's life, even if it's a justifiable life taking. Lieutenant Colonel Grossman talks about in his books On Killing and On Combat the instinctual and inherent abhorration that human beings have when it comes to doing violence or the taking of another human being's life. In fact, I think he references that, or another perhaps anthropologist that I can't think of offhand references how most animals do not kill animals within their own species. Human beings are no different than that. So Grossman talks about how the military itself and how the police and how, in a large part, our society is now taking these natural, instinctual inhibitors to taking life, and we're kind of flipping the switch on them in order to get people to take another life. And because of that, when you don't have that inhibition coupled with an extremely deliberate backside approach to care and the well-being and the healing of the psychological trauma that comes along with it, you have upticks in the rates of PTSD. He references the Vietnam War, and that we made the most efficient killing machines out of our soldiers than the U.S. military ever had before. And part of the reason we had the rates of PTSD that we had never had before was because of that. Now, instead of people trying to avoid killing, everybody was killing, and we had to deal with the psychological fallout of that. So when we talk about abortion, you have, I guess you could say, the pro-life side of it, saying that, well, human life is inherently valuable. It's inherently valuable because of virtue ethics, deontological arguments, and consequentialism. It is nobody's right to take another life without a justifiable reason. And most of the time, a baby within the womb of a woman doesn't warrant the taking of its own life. In fact, it can't defend itself. It's doing nothing aggressive that would, in the classical sense, validate its killing. So that's one side of the argument. Sure, there's things that I've missed, and you could go much deeper into a religious aspect of it, in terms of the sanctity from God of the baby life, and that is something for a whole nother video and a whole nother subject. I already think I've gone slightly long on this one. In the next video, I will talk about the individual liberty side of it, and then from there we'll kind of go to what is true about the current state of affairs with abortion, what is real information, and what are some misinformation or disinformation about the subject that is floating around in our society. So until next time, have a good day.